Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Levi. I'm the founder of Dynamic. We help accountancy and financial firms work smarter and not harder. We leverage AI to automate processes, streamline workflows, and enhance client communication. This is the podcast, The Balance, and today I'm with a very special guest. Jim, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your time. Could you tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
My name is Jim Gundersdorff. I'm an enrolled agent here in the United States, North Carolina specifically. I can work in all 50 states, 4 territories under my license because it comes from the United States Treasury. A little different than a CPA. They're more tied to a state. And then if you work in another state, you have to go be licensed in that state. I focus mainly on tax and tax planning. We do just enough accounting to get the taxes taken care of, but our real focus is proactive tax planning. People come in with problems and they say, I want to do something else, or I want to do this as opposed to that. And we try to figure out what's the best path to get from this place to that place.
Nice. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? Because you are in the industry for quite a while already. We talked about this when we first had our first conversation, of course. How did you start this? Where did you start? Why did you start it? And how has it been?
Well, I went to school. I started out pre-med. I was studying biology and chemistry. I was going to be a doctor at one point. At least that's what my mother would have preferred. Anyway, long story short, I progressed through that process and figured out that I was going to be in debt no matter what I did. I figured that the most expedient way to get from point A to point B was to switch over to business, because in chemistry, everything on one side of the equation is equal to everything on the other side of the equation. Well, in accounting, it's pretty much the same way. Everything on this side has to equal whatever is on that side on the balance sheet. So I was like, I could do that. So I switched over to business at UNC. I went from Fairfield to Duke and from Duke to UNC, and basically figured out that that was a better path for me. I went to work for another firm in Raleigh as starting out, and decided that that really wasn't something I wanted to do, because all through college I had been working doing floor waxing, carpet cleaning, window cleaning, and I was pretty much doing my own thing. And working for somebody else, I figured out just was not a good fit. So I started going out and banging on doors. Literally back then, you had the yellow pages, which the yellow pages were like yay thick. For the phone book, that's probably something you haven't ever seen, as a phone book. Probably a lot of other people haven't seen that. But back when I started, there was actually probably a 4-inch phone book for Durham. I went in that phone book, started going out to the mall, started talking to people, started, saying, hey, I'm an accountant, I can do this. Got a loan for about $10,000, went and bought 2 Apple IIe's. That's 2 Apple IIe's. Back then we had floppy disks, so you actually took the disk and flopped it over. I actually started back when we still had mainframes, where you put punch cards in. I've seen, it's kind of like the guy going from the horse and buggy to seeing a guy land on the moon, just in terms of like the technology, because we went from floppy disks that were like 5¼ inches, then we went down to like 3½ inches, and then hard drives, and now we're into AI. It's been a long trip for 40-some years.
Yeah, I can imagine you've seen it all. And by the way, I have seen phone books, but just
Oh,
shortly.
okay, well, good.
Just
Good,
shortly.
yeah. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah,
nice.
because some people think I started when the dinosaurs were still on the earth, so,
I assume you're not that old.
I'm not that old, no.
You already
Although I
mentioned AI.
did go to DMV the other day and renew my license, and the young lady that was sitting there, she my license for driving. She looks at me and says, "Your hair color is either gray or white. Which would you like?" And I looked at her and I'm like, "Gray or white?" I'm like, I think it's brown. She says, "Oh no." She says, "It's gray or white. You have to pick one." And then she chose white. So I said, "Okay, fine."
All right.
That's what a 20-something will do to you.
It is what it is, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You already mentioned AI just now,
Yep.
that we're now in the age of AI. Are you already like looking into that, working with AI? How are you maybe working with AI, and what's your vision?
We use it on a daily basis. It still does some basic things well. It's still got a lot of holes in it. And we've got paid subscriptions to ChatGPT, Galaxy AI, Claude by Anthropic. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else, but I think that's all of them that we use. And they all do, oh, Copilot. That's the other one. And they all do things well, but they're very frustrating at various times because you want to do something else. See, I grew up with Star Trek, okay? So to me, talking to the computer would be like the ideal. Okay. You tell it what you want it to do, it does it. It comes up with this. And then again, even in Star Trek, you see the progression from the early episodes with Kirk to the later episodes where they're just with Discovery, that they can actually model things for you in front of you, which is
Hmm.
ideally where we get to at some point in time. But I think we're a long way off. I think the two limiting factors on AI are power and chips, because the size of the chips have to get so small. I was listening to a fellow the other day talk about that, but basically that's our two limitations: is power and chip size. So we might be 20 years out from really being able to really put AI to work.
Okay. Now, and how do you mean, like, how would that be an issue? The power and the chip size? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Because the chips have to get smaller than where they are right now. And currently the biggest we can make in the United States is I think 12 microns. And it's a process but that you use to do that. But the process doesn't allow for what the Chinese are currently doing, which is like on the 7 micron or below level,
Hmm.
which will get us to greater speeds and capacity and all that sort of stuff. So that's our limiting factor. If we're going to actually build stuff in the United States, which, you got to lay the infrastructure, and we don't have that infrastructure at the moment. I mean, we got some of it, but not enough to get to where we're trying to go. So that's down the road. But the bigger issue, I think, is the power. It takes a
Hmm.
lot of power to run all that AI stuff. And unless you're going to do an all the above strategy, solar, wind, all the other things, oil, gas, I don't see how you get there. I'm not particularly fond of coal just because there's a variety of problems with that. But, you're going to have to do something to get from where you are to where you need to be in terms of the demands.
Jim, are there any specific things that you wish AI could do for you or for your business that is not really able to do yet?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'd like to be able to give it scenarios and have it basically walk me through what the holes and problems of those scenarios are, which it can't really do at the moment because it doesn't know as much information as I know about that particular taxpayer and what the situation is. I mean, you could upload all the tax returns and all that stuff, but that's still not everything you need to know because there's that human connection of, like, I hear this person talking to me and they're saying these are the problems I have. I've got problems with, my family worked with me in here, and so part of that is they need to go to a psychologist and sit down and have a conversation because they're working with their kids. And there's all these dynamics from the parent child relationship that are impeding on this work relationship that shouldn't be, and you got to remove that stuff, and that's not something AI knows how to do at the moment. That's human interaction. So there's a lot of that.
Yeah. And with your current firm, I'm curious about the following. What are the things that you're working towards? What is like the bigger vision, the bigger goal, and how you're trying to like maybe implement AI into that?
Excuse me. Well, like I was sitting there around April 15th, which is our deadline date, and it was about a week out, and I'm sitting there thinking we had something we had to take these journal entries and get them in so I could do the tax return. And I'm thinking to myself, we had to type it in to get it in Excel, or basically we exported it from another program, Quicken or QuickBooks, and then we put it in Excel, we sorted it, got it where we needed it, made the journal entries, put the account numbers in, and then I'm thinking to myself, we really shouldn't have to mess with this again. We really should be able to just take this and then suck it into the accounting program. So I played around with it for about an hour using ChatGPT and figured out, yeah, we can do that. Basically, I took, I don't know how many items that were in that transaction list, but probably, 15, 20 a month, pairs of two. And basically it sucked it into the program in like 30 seconds, which was like, would have been an hour, 2 hours of typing that in previously. So things like that you sit there and you go, it's going to take some work on your part to actually figure out how to do that, how to do it the first time. But once you do it, then you can save that. That's the nice thing about having those conversation things. Now, I do wish that you would be able to sort it alphabetically, or you would be able to rearrange them or something. I haven't figured out how to do that yet because it doesn't
Hmm.
seem to exist. Now you can
Hmm.
search on them and you can go find it out what you did by typing in names. Like I was looking for something I did with a specific item and name, so I typed in that name and it came up with it, and it took me right to the conversation. But I really like that we could, sort of index it and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It does
Yeah.
remember what we did the last time and sort of builds on that. That's good. But we're still in the early days. You think Model T Ford, as far as a car, it's the early days. It'll get you there, maybe, but you're not exactly sure how that ride's going to.
Yeah, 100%. But one thing is for sure, AI will definitely grow. It will get better. There
Well,
will be
yeah, yeah.
like
Just in
solutions,
the
and eventually will.
just in the time that I started using it, which is probably less than 2 years ago, I mean, the path has just been incredible in terms of the growth, in terms of the capabilities. It still doesn't do some of the stuff I like. We need to figure out sometimes on a mutual fund what the percentage of non-taxable state items are. Well, based on the fact that there's federal U.S. Treasury bonds that are in that portfolio sometimes. So you need that percentage. So it does a really good job of that. And it'll go out and find 10 sources that confirm that that is the number. And then you can go check it. But it takes about a minute, 2 minutes per fund to go do that. That's a lot of time. So, I mean, you can go find me these guys here in the background and it does it. That's great. But it's not like it pops right up. So
Yeah,
you got to go figure out what else you're going to do while you're doing this in the
makes
background,
sense. Makes total
stuff
sense.
like
Yeah.
that.
And I want to circle back quickly to your firm. And I'm curious, what makes you different? What makes you better than the competition, and why should people choose you as their accountant?
Because I treat what I do as an art form, which is not the same thing as what most people are trying to produce some kind of intangible product. I mean, we're still trying to do that too, but I really look at what I do as art. If you do what you're doing well, you're going to do it one time. You're never going to be able to repeat it. You'll have to do something else the next time. But it really is like a piece of art. When you finish a tax return and it works, or you do a representation for a taxpayer and it works, and that's just it's a good feeling. Like I had this guy that owed $2.5 million, for instance, to the IRS, and the reason he got into that place was because of another governmental agency that owed him money 20, 30 years back. So there's just the insanity of it all. Okay, just as a basic thing, this guy had to pay his bills, so he did what he had to do, and that got him into problems. All right. Well, I'm talking to the revenue officer, and she's like, "This guy, he needs to pay." And I get he needs to pay, but he doesn't have the money to pay. He doesn't have $2.5 million to pay you guys. So she starts sending out levies and levies and levies, get the wife's wages, gets the husband's self-employment income, and just everything they got, rental income that's coming in, everything. So I file a bunch of cap appeals. Now, a cap appeal is a collection appeal process, supposed to be very quick. You file it 3 days later, you're supposed to get to talk to somebody. Well, it doesn't work that way in reality, okay? You actually have to wait, and sometimes it might be 3, 4 months. So, but the first thing you have to do before you get to that appeal is you have to talk to the manager. So I talked to one manager, and this is how crazy the IRS is. A month apart, I have a new manager that calls me and says, on the next set of cap appeals that I do, the first manager said, no, we're going to send these on to appeals. The second manager looks at me and goes, you're right. We shouldn't be doing this. This makes no sense. She removed all the levies. So there was a release of levy, and then there was not going to be any additional levies. But to actually get that paperwork took another 10 days. So the taxpayer's still over here hurting for the last 3 months. And then you've got the things that they've been doing in Washington, which kind of created some of this problem because they've clawed back. Both of them work for some sort of a medical facility or research facility, and they pulled back 20% of whatever the grants were from the feds that they had back in January, and then they had to pull it back from the people. So
Hmm.
everybody's got a 20% reduction going into this, which then meant that this woman got a zero check, which is not supposed to happen in a garnishment, but it did.
Hmm.
And it was one of those things that whoever thought of this was going to happen because these conditions didn't ever exist before. So, I mean, that was a good day. But again, when will you have those conditions to work that problem and come to that solution one more time? There are all these one-offs. So you have to really be able to think on your feet and figure out what you're going to do. Because what I'm doing is using what's currently going on in the general economy. It's insane over here in terms of nobody knows who they even work for at IRS.
Yeah.
We've never had that before. Do you know what it's like to try and actually get something done when you don't know who to call?
Yeah, it's hard.
So you go down a list and you start here, you work your way up.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. With your firm, what are like certain challenges that you are facing at the moment?
Well, the IRS is our biggest challenge at the moment.
Oh, yeah?
Because literally trying to get anything fixed that's broken. You send in a return and you want that thing to go in electronically. You want the checks to come back in electronic format into the person's bank account. You don't want any interaction with people if you can avoid it in doing that tax return at the moment. Because once you get a person involved, we have now slowed things down dramatically. No telling how long it's going to take to get that fixed. So we do everything we can to make sure that whatever we put in that tax return is going to fly on the other side and keep on flying, because we don't ever want to see it again. Because the last thing we want to do is to try and talk to somebody to fix a problem at IRS. Because it'll take us forever.
Yeah.
I can't tell you the number of hours we spent on our $2.5 million client that owes the money, just to get to the point where we could get somebody to talk to release that set of levies that were being put on that person because they were egregious. It shouldn't be that difficult. The taxpayer has an absolute right to representation. Taxpayer also has a right to be treated fairly. They weren't being treated fairly under the system. They were getting egregious treatment because you're not supposed to get a check for $0. You're supposed to still be able to buy groceries to eat. And if you can't get money for gas and groceries, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. It was crazy. And finally, I got to somebody that believed, just like I did, that was crazy. But you gotta, I had a class years ago where the teacher, he was an attorney out of Chicago, Bob McKenzie, and great teacher. And he said, there's only two people that work for Internal Revenue Service. There's Mother Teresa and Attila the Hun. Only two people that are employees over there. And if you get Attila the Hun on the phone, you need to call back and find Mother Teresa, because that's who you want to talk to. She's got a heart.
Yeah. So you mean there's like two types of people, or he means there's two types of people that work at the IRS?
The mindset right. Of the organization. Yeah. There's not really two people that work there. It's just kind of like...
I know, but like two types, so you have to... okay, I misunderstood. No, it makes sense.
No, yeah. It's in a metaphorical sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. All right. Going back to your firm, and I'm curious to hear like, what's important to you. What are like the core values of you and your firm, and how does that show up in like the day-to-day? We already talked about this a little bit, but I'm curious.
Whatever I'm doing, I want it to be a challenge, number one, but I also want it to be fun, number two.
Okay.
I mean, sure, I got to support myself, but those other things at this age of my life, that's really what's important. Is I want to have fun and I want to be challenged. I want to have things that are going to cause me to come up with a solution to a problem. Things that are going to cause me to think and stretch where my brain is.
Yeah.
That, into areas that I've never gone before because I never had to solve that problem. I mean, that's what being alive means, is solving problems.
Yeah.
If you look at what your day consists of, every day you're solving problems. God knows how many in the course of a day. But that's really all we do is solve problems. And when we stop solving problems, I don't know what we do. You got to have that thing that keeps you going. And that's what keeps me going, is that inherent, it's fun to solve these problems.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but
it gives you like a purpose, I would say.
It's a purpose, but it's more than that. It's like you're trying to figure something out that you've not figured out before. Like we had another client that came in and, the prior accountant had done some things on the tax return, and I'm looking at him like, this doesn't quite make sense to me. So I do some research and I found out, yeah, this is one of those things that's very gray. There's no real regulation to speak of. And that is one way to do it. But there's also another way you can do it, and that will actually get them more money back. So we were able to amend that prior return. So they'll get back like, I don't know, $6,000, $7,000. And that'll save them money this year because they'll get more money back. In fact, this year it's a bigger amount of money that they'll save by doing it the way we're talking versus what the other accountant did. Part of that was I had to call up the other accountant. Now, the other accountant was very upset with the taxpayer because they did not leave on good terms. And so the guy's talking to me and he's like, don't throw me under the bus because I did the best I could given what I knew and the problem this client was causing me because they were bothering the hell out of me. And, and that's never a good thing when you basically are in a adversarial position with your taxpayer and trying to figure out their situation. So I got him squared away. I got the taxpayer squared away, and we were able to save them money. Now that's mediation. Mm-hmm. There's no other thing you can call that. So that's, but it's still solving a problem because he's got a problem, she's got a problem, and the person that's underlying. And the reason they have a problem is because they need this money for long-term care because this person's in a facility that they need to spend $3,000-$4,000 a month on, maybe more. I forget what the exact numbers are, but it's a lot of money. So that might buy them 1 month at what we did there, but still, it's money they didn't have before, plus interest.
Yeah. Jim, what is one piece of advice that you would give to an accountant, an entrepreneur that is looking to grow or looking to innovate their business?
Don't get in business for yourself. Go get a real job. But I say that in jest because I look at it every day I get up and I'm unemployed, all right, until I do something of value for somebody else. Mm-hmm. And really, that's the key to it. You got to figure out how to give value to somebody else, no matter what you're doing. Whether you want to expand, whatever it is that you're attempting to accomplish, if you're not going to provide value to somebody else that's on the other side of the table, you got to win, they got to win. If everybody's not winning, it's a bad deal. And that's kind of how we try to do our stuff with the Internal Revenue Service. We try to make sure that everybody's winning when we get done. Because if they're not going to win something on the other side, if it doesn't make sense, they're not going to do it. Because the easiest thing in the world for the service to say is no. They know how to say that. That's in their books. They know how to do that. They documented how to say no. How to say yes is not documented. And you have to convince somebody how to get to a yes. And that's probably the hardest thing that you will ever do is to figure out what that other person's yes is and how to get them there. And you got to show, sometimes you got to draw them a roadmap because you might understand how to get there, but until they understand how to get there, they're not going to do it. It's like, when a client calls you and says, well, you told them to put money in the retirement plan. And they're like, but I don't have the money to put it in a retirement plan. And I'm like, but look, you're like 70 years old. Okay. So you can put the money in today in last tax year, and you can take it out tomorrow in this tax year. Mm-hmm. It's the same money, but we just saved you a bunch of money by doing that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I'm going to do what? But that's the same thing with everything else that you do in life. You got to get the people on the other side to understand what it is that you're trying to help them accomplish. Mm-hmm. And that's very difficult sometimes because you got to say it over and over and over again. And it might take, 5, 6, 7, 8 times that you're going to have a conversation before they really understand what you're trying to tell them to do and why it makes sense. Because most people don't understand. I'm putting money in for the prior tax year. I can take it out to tomorrow or the next day, and it's in this tax year. Well, most people's minds don't really segregate that way. So you got to get people past whatever their objections are and really make them understand that this is a good thing to do, that you're telling them something that's legitimate. And like the last guy I talked to, he's 71, 2, 3, I forget, but he's still doing, sales. So he was able to do this. He was able to put $11,000, $12,000 away. It saved him, $3,000, $4,000. So it's a 25% rate of return day one when you make the deposit. You take it out the next day, you still made the 25% deposit. You still get that money. You saved it. It's real money. So even though it's complicated, it's still fairly simple also. So you gotta draw maps for people, basically.
Yeah,
And you gotta be
that's
willing to
it.
draw those maps. And
That's it.
AI doesn't do that really well either. I've been trying to get it to draw a map for forever and a day, and it drives me crazy.
Well, maybe in the future. Who knows what's about to come?
Eventually it'll get there. But I keep trying. Every new model that comes out, I try it.
Yeah. Um, Jim, if people want to learn more from you, or if they maybe want to work with you or just connect with you, where can they best find you?
Gunny.com, Gunny.com. Or you can send an email to tax period DOCS at Gunny, GUNNY.com. Either one of those two ways.
Perfect. I'll make sure to put those links also in the description of the podcast below.
Thank you.
Jim, I really want to thank you so much for being on the podcast today. It was
My
nice.
pleasure.
People don't know because we will edit this, but we had some difficulties with the connection, but the output is good. I'm very happy. And yeah, thank you so much for your insight, for the value. It's nice to know a little bit more about you as well. Do you've got any last words for the podcast?
It's not often you get to talk to a dinosaur.
Well, lucky me, lucky me. All right. Yeah, Jim, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No
Ladies and
problem.
gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen at home, thank you so much for listening. My name is Levi, and this was The Balance.